Hi everyone, welcome to the Velvet Lounge Life. We're getting a little bit funky with the music tonight, but this video should be very interesting, especially to my button lovers and subscribers. If you are not subscribed, all you have to do is click that button that says subscribe. That's it. You pay nothing ever. So we're going to do a Q&A. I'm going to answer a lot of questions about, oh my goodness, buying and selling buttons. The reason why, this is probably in the top 5 of question areas that I get. And I kind of shy away from talking about the buying and the selling, but today I am going to reveal pretty much all for you. And yes, I am sitting in my favorite squeaky chair. So first of all, thank you to everyone that tuned in to my live show that I did on the 29th. I was nervous thinking no one's going to show up, and everybody that counted showed up. And those that couldn't show up, they let me know well in advance, and you count too. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We had a lot of fun. I gave away a vintage signed Italian brooch, a bag of buttons, a bunch of ephemera, like authentic real ephemera, and a bundle of vintage children's books. I wanted to give away more, but eventually time just ran out. Also, I'm going to do my live differently so that I can give away more things in the future. But I also like receiving things, and you guys have been amazing to me by tuning into the channel, watching the videos for longer than 15 minutes, or just listening to the videos in the background is awesome as well. You just click on one of my playlists, hit play, and just let it play through while you're doing your chores, your artwork, your relaxing, whatever. But thank you guys for all of that. Thank you for the holiday Christmas cards and New Year's cards. All the holidays seem to be covered. Thank you so much. And I did receive a box of Ferrero Rochers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That person wanted to remain, adios mio, remain anonymous. But I will say that the letter A is in their name. So thank you so much for that. Greatly appreciated it. And I also received the prettiest bundle of costume jewelry. There were like 6 pieces, and I actually put them immediately into my personal collection. So thank you so much for that. So let's get down to business. I don't want to play around. What is this? So what this is a giant bunch of our 20, I wrote it down because I had to remember how many pounds. So, yep, 29, well, it's over 29, almost 30 pounds, and that's pure. Include this big box, which actually had boots in it, so that tells you how big it is. There were boots in here. This box is, I don't know how tall it is. It's pretty tall, as you can see, and it is filled to the rim and the brim. It is so heavy, you guys. It is insane. And so this box of buttons needs a brand new home. So that is one of the things that we will be talking about in this video as well. So let's get down to some Q&A stuff while we also look through. Obviously, I'm not sorting through this entire box. It would take probably a couple of weeks of doing this, you know, just steadily. And that's a lot of time I do not have. However, I already have a large and extensive collection of buttons that I actually collect for myself personally. And I actually like know exactly what they are. They're sorted, everything else. And these are buttons that I've been through twice already. So one of the questions that I get often is, how do you sort your buttons? I would say I sort them with patience. The reason I would say that is because the worst thing you can do is get the buttons and quickly go through them and be like, okay, that's it. You should really go through them, especially when you have a quantity like this. This is all like 30 pounds of buttons. You should go through something like this. I would say for every 10 pounds, go through it at least once. So this, I would go through at least 3 times per 10 pounds. And actually, I would then allow my child to go through it. She's a young lady, but my daughter to go through it. And she, you know, might see, because she actually sews, so she might actually see stuff in here that she wants to use for her projects. Take it away, better than buying them, for several reasons. One, the quality of the button is going to be a lot better than what you can buy today or nowadays. And also the variety and the style. And in some case, I mean, colors are not an issue in today's market. So if you go to Michael's, Joanna's, if you have your favorite, there's in New York actual stores that sell nothing but buttons and findings and zippers. And you can go in there and find all sorts of styles and colors and shapes. There's no limit, you guys. It is a nirvana of buttons, and the best shops are in the garment district, which is in the Chelsea area of New York. And so when I go there, I definitely go with the intention of doing a couple things. So we're going to talk a lot about buying and selling. One of the things I do when I go to the Chelsea area of New York, this is sad, but I look for stores that are closing first. Why are those stores closing? Usually it's a generational thing. No one else in the family wants to carry on that type of business. So they need to liquidate. And I will ask them, you know, do you have any old buttons, you know, that are somewhere that I could look at? And I have been in attics. I have been in basements. I have been in back corner areas of these shops where there are things that are in old dusty boxes. And I have found some amazing buttons. But obviously the stuff that's right out in your face when you walk in the store is always there. So you can always pick from that as well. So that's one of my super secret buying tips. But when we make this trip to New York, I don't go there just to buy buttons. Usually I am working on an acting gig, and obviously there's time off, there's time in between the job, you know, not that day. Like usually when I'm on set, it is for an entire day, usually part of the evening. But what I will do is like the next day, because I usually stay over for a few days at least. It depends on the length of the project. But there's always a day somewhere in between or even at the end where you can use that time to go and make that extra side trip, which is simply a taxi drive away. Unless you're filming in Chelsea or in that area, then you can simply walk the blocks, as I always say. And there are other great shops that sell, you know, fabric and such, and they also sell buttons too. But my number one tip is what I said initially. So the other question that I get, besides where do I find and buy my buttons, is how do I get them for free? So this is a difficult question to answer, but it's not super difficult, so I'll just do my best. So one of the things I do, it's called harvesting. Harvesting to us is all of this stuff is going to go away. Do what you can with it before it goes away. So it's sort of like recycling in a way, but we sort of like the word harvesting. So for example, if there's a clothing collection, whether it be at a thrift shop or you know of, you know, someone that just has to get rid of a lot of clothing, then what you want to do is simply go through and see what the buttons look like, see what the zippers look like. Did someone forget a brooch? Which we actually have had that happen a few times on clothing. Recover whatever you can or harvest. That is a super simple, easy way. You go to a tag sale, they're selling something for, I'm making these prices up because I don't usually buy stuff at tag sales, but if you go, and that's not true, I buy things, but usually it's not clothing. Usually I'm buying like costume jewelry, anything that's like that, small treasures. But clothing, honestly, I don't look at a lot, but when I was young, I did look at it. And you would look at it, look at the buttons, and see if you can find like a garment that you could buy for 50 cents, $1, and maybe you have a set of Chanel buttons on it. You know, obviously, if you find a Chanel jacket or something like that, a dress, you have to look at that whole garment. But usually, if the garment is shot, like it's no good as far as wearing it, obviously recover the buttons. That's a good thing. Yves Saint Laurent, Givenchy, there are a lot of, and I'm talking about the vintage stuff, not this new fake. It's not even fake. I call it fake. It's real. It's real, you guys. It's just that the quality of it isn't what it used to be, and it's so mass made. Back in the day, like in the 70s and the 80s, and even like the early 90s, you could find true, beautiful, awesome couture at very, very little money. And whether you're keeping the garment, reselling the garment, which people did not do back then, or recovering parts of that garment, it was a great thing. And then I would say the middle of the 1990s came into play up until today. And unfortunately, some of those makers are using plastic buttons, a lot of them, honestly, nondescript buttons at that, on their garments. Like in here, I have several, and here is one of them, and here's another one. These are Liz Claiborne buttons. I just wanted to make sure they were turned the right way. These are by Liz well, these are made by the Waterbury Button Company for Liz Claiborne. They are made of metal. Every designer button should be made of metal, and it should have the organization's logo on it as far as I'm concerned. And Waterbury Button Company made these for Liz Claiborne in various sizes and metals. So this one is brass. This one is a painted brass. But they also have, you know, come in silver. And if you turn them over, some of them look like this on the back. This is when the Waterbury Button Company was sold to another company. Then for, I don't know how it happened. I do have a whole history on this in a video that I created. But whatever happened, and they were like, wait a minute, people want to buy these buttons because they're made by the Waterbury Button Company. So the company ended up going back to its name and putting the W's on the back of their buttons. And, you know, they just went on. The quality never went down, but the identification went away for a short amount of time. And this is a good example of that. And then the cool thing is that Liz Claiborne was like, well, we still love the work that you do, and we are not going anywhere. So they, you know, stayed with them even through company changes. Now they're and they have been for many years, known again as Waterbury Button Company. There was just a brief time in history when their name was changed. So I was happy that I could quickly go through and find these buttons, because I was like, that's a good way to show, like, you know, that whole branding thing that everyone is into. My thing is, you know, if you're going to overcharge people for your clothes or purses or whatever, You know, everything on it should be quality, right down to the button and or whatever fasteners. So one of the things I did, as you can see, is I took several buttons, put them inside of these ornament things. It's like you make your own Christmas ornaments. Why not have a bunch of buttons in there? But I do not need these. So I would like to work with you guys to figure out how I could amicably and fairly give away all of these buttons. Every single one that you see in this box. Plus, I have others. I cannot express to you guys how many I have. I know other people will show their button collection of random buttons. I have a bunch, you guys, that would put many of those collections to kindergarten shame. And I am trying to whittle down this collection substantially for a couple reasons. One, I only have one child, or we only have one child. And I know exactly what she likes, and that stuff, those are the one, you know, the things that have been put to the side, carefully sorted, they've been tagged, they're pretty much bagged, etc. I still will have a large amount of buttons after I give away probably close to 50, 60 pounds of buttons in total. I will still have numerous pounds of buttons left over for crafting and projects and junk journals and more giveaways in the future, etc., etc. The list goes on and on. But for now, I am starting with this like 30 pounds of buttons, and would like your help by you simply leaving a comment and suggestions down below this video. Or if you watch any of my other videos, I will actually receive a report with the most recent comments in it. And I can look at that and see, you know, what your suggestions are as far as giving away all of these buttons. It could be done as a giant bundle. It could be done, which I think is more fair, in small or smaller bundles, not tiny bundles. They have to be, you guys, they have to be at least half a pound or something. The other thing is I do have to be careful of postage. I don't receive any help or support or anything with this channel. So every time I'm mailing out all these free packages, it's simply just costing me not only whatever I'm giving away, but the postage is the most punishing part of it. Giving this stuff away makes me happy, but the postage makes me very unhappy. Look at this really cool multi-dimensional metal button. It has this shank on it, like that. And so one of the other, this one kind of is like, I want to say Art Deco in design. It's very futuristic. I dropped it, of course, in here somewhere. You guys know me. I will have the dropsies, just dropping stuff all over the place. And this is one that I like as well with a swirl. This is a Waterbury Button Company. When they were in transition, they were still doing work mostly for designers. So if I should try to do research to figure out which designer used this style button. And look at this one. This is, I don't know who this is by, but it has this shank on it. This pin style shank. Really cute. So one of the other questions I get is, you know, okay, so I have a little bit of an issue with this one. So I am a member of several button groups, and one of the, I would say, #1 questions that we get is someone will come in to a bunch of buttons that they found somewhere or that they got from grandma, whoever, and they will take a picture and it will look nothing like this. It will be a poor quality picture with just a bunch of buttons, and they will ask us, do you see anything special in here? So they expect us to pick out the Hope Diamond, the largest nugget of gold ever, a silver ingot, and the sapphires, and let alone the emeralds, out of just a mass of stuff. And the other question that we'll get, which is similar, is someone might take a picture and they will say, oh, I found this, it's made of metal. Do you have any other information on it? It's like, well, you can see it's made of metal, we can see it's made of metal, but what research did you do to figure out what this is? So one of the things that I suggest people do before getting on the nerves of hardcore collectors is that you take the item, let me pick up a different button, I'll pick up this one. You take the button, you get a really good picture of it via Google's search, using the camera for your search. So if you go to Google and you look at the line where you would type in text, you will see a microphone and you will also see a camera. You want to click on the camera. It will focus and autofocus until it's clear enough, and it will take a picture of your item and search the internet for said item. And you could do that with anything. It doesn't have to just be a button. And it will, if it can find out in the world, the ether, the universe, a picture that matches your picture that you just took using Google Lens, is what I believe it's called, then it will bring up anything that has that item in the photograph. So you can use that as the super quickest, easiest, most basic third grade way to search for your item to see if it's out there. Does it take time? Yes, if you have a whole bunch of things that you need to search, but it's better than you putting a post somewhere and no one is responding to you because you just got on everybody's nerve because you did not do any research and you're expecting them to use their time, effort, and resources to do that for you. Now, if you find information and you still want more information, then what you do is you simply put a post out there with a picture of the item. Make sure you get a really good picture of the back, the front, and the back of the item so that they can see how it's made, and also the side. So the back is important because of the shank. And the side is important because you can see the thickness of the button. You can also see a different angle of the shank. And obviously, I mean, everyone knows to take a really good clear picture of the front of the button. So for example, this one has words. No one will be able to see it if it's too far away or if the picture is blurry. So you just want to do that as a way. And also when you're like in those button groups, people will jump all over the place to help you if you do those very basic things that I just, suggested or pointed out. So another question I get quite often is, and I am answering this question probably for the third time, and I don't mind because new people come on all the time and you need to have this information too, and I get that. But they will ask, how can you tell if a button is glass or if it is plastic? I am going to give you the worst way ever to do this, and I do not suggest you do it. But if you do it, it's at your own risk. So the easiest way, quickest way, and it's 100% accurate to figure out if something is glass or not, is you would take it, and this is disgusting, but you would put it in your mouth, like use your side teeth versus your front, and clamp down on it, tap it like with your teeth. Now, the issue with doing that is if your teeth are not healthy, they might crack or break or something. And if you had a hot beverage or a cold beverage, the temperature variation plus you cracking down on something hard might also crack or break a tooth. So many, many warnings. I say don't do this, but I have done this myself. And so if you tamp down on it, you will instantly know if that is plastic or if it is glass. Obviously, if it's plastic, your teeth will sink in a bit. If it's glass, that will not happen unless you have teeth like Moonraker from the James Bond movie, or a shark or something. And even for them, probably not, a pleasant experience. So that question, I think, is answered, as best as I can answer it. There are other ways, like tapping two glass items together, but sometimes that test will still make it could still give you a false positive as far as like a really good plastic. This is a Colt button right here. I have, and in here I noticed there's several, I put several Colt buttons are in here, made from Colt rock. Tapping that with my teeth, that almost seems as if it is glass, but I can actually use my tooth to scratch this, and I can tell, glass is not going to scratch. So another way is you could use a sharp tool and scratch across the back, and I would say the back because you don't want to ruin the front of it, surface, and that will let you know as well what you're dealing with, because if it's glass, it should not scratch. I just have so many buttons here, you guys. You need to really take ownership of some of these because I can't take them with me. So another question I get is, oh, this is a really good one. So when selling online, especially that website, if you know what I mean, and I don't mean Etsy, but Etsy as well, one of the questions I will get is about, how do you know what's real? How do you know what's fake? Everybody is claiming that the stuff they have is an antique or it's vintage. I would first of all say, when you're looking at the listings, don't look at the word antique or vintage. Just concentrate on what the item or items are. So Charmstrings is a good one. There are many people who will claim that they're selling an antique charm string. That, and I have no issue saying that, this is a lie. They're not mistaken. They're just simply, honestly, you guys, trying to get over on you. Because true antique charm strings are rare. The reason they're rare, it's for a couple of reasons. One reason is when people find, like, this is not a charm string, but when people find bunches of buttons like this tied together, their first inclination is to cut them apart, whether it's for sorting or using, or they just want to get rid of the string or whatever, your buttons, whatever it is. So with charm strings, because the buttons on a charm string and the other bits and bobs, because true charm strings don't have only buttons on them. They have other little implements and bits and bobs as well. So when people find them, they actually cut them apart because maybe there's a little tractor on there, or not a tractor, they didn't have tractors, a little buggy on there, a little horse charm on there. The buttons are usually pretty fantastical, so they want those little buttons, and so their first thing is, and most people don't know what a charm string is. I will even go out and say I kind of brought the whole charm string world out into the light, because I have an entire series of videos I did on charm strings, and then after that, suddenly it took off. Unfortunately, fortunately, lots and lots of people looked at my videos, but unfortunately, I did not know enough about YouTube to ask them to please hit the subscribe button. It is 100% free, and especially on this channel, I'm probably going to end up sending you some free stuff eventually. And I do like receiving things myself, so thank you to everyone that sent me Christmas cards. I received like 3. I received a nice big box of 48 pieces of Ferrero Rochers. I also received, I don't know how someone knew this, but a bag of Snickers. That's my second favorite candy. I also received, and I'm actually looking at these up on my shelf. Let's see if I can get it in the picture. Where are you? Planters Mixed Nuts. I don't know if I can get it that high. My chair is squeaking. I also, and there's the empty box of Ferrero Rochers with the remaining Snickers in it. But thank you guys for the people who sent me those. You know who you are. You are amazing. You're champion. I really appreciate it and hope that your new year billion times blessed. But yes, so the thing is with Charmstrings, you have to look at the string. That's why they're called Charmstrings. They were usually just like these really old jadeite, or they're almost like jade buttons. You could see right here, they have a cotton string. That is sort of the style of string that they would have used even in the Victorian era and Edwardian and pre-Victorian. It would have been simply a cotton string or piece of thread usually. And the issue with thread, whenever which was a common thing to use for them, is of course thread is thin. And also, over time, cotton actually will deteriorate into oblivion. So imagine having 1,000 buttons or whatever, 100 buttons on a charm string. What happens is they snap, they break, but the buttons remain, which is awesome. But that's, no longer a charm string because they're no longer strung together. So what people will do today, and they have been doing, unfortunately, ever since I released my initial videos, is they have been stringing the buttons themselves and calling what they've done an antique charm string. Now, there's no issue with calling it a charm string because that is what it is. But the issue is with the word antique. I mean, you could have a vintage charm string, but is it really an antique? Is it really vintage? That's the issue. If I strung these all together today, that is a charm string, but it's not an antique or vintage charm string. I might be using, in this box, there are antique buttons, vintage buttons, and newer buttons. And that is what should be in the description when you're selling or buying these things so that you don't overpay. And also so that you as a seller can be looked at as an honest seller. So that's just something to definitely be aware of. The reason I discuss this as well is there's a lady who, after she purchased, I can't tell you how many charm strings, she was like, I thought that these are antique, and now I'm looking at the strings, and I could tell that they're not old. And that's the other thing. I mean, the string in between the buttons should be dirty, dingy, old. It should have maybe even verdigris on it, depending upon what happened and how those buttons aged. There should be, usually the charm string will no longer be tight. It will be a little bit like looser because unfortunately due to age, the string is starting to maybe give way. And so those are just things to look out for. Never pick a charm string up like, this is not a charm string, but don't pick it up like this. You want to scoop your hands multiple underneath and lift it because you don't want to put any stress or strain on the string. That is why many of these did not survive, is due to people purposely, which they can do whatever they want, and it's not wrong in my eyes, but they purposely cut these things apart to use the buttons for other things, or improper lifting caused the string to snap and break, which probably took very little to no effort due to moths and other things. And now you have a bunch of buttons all over the place, which you're lucky you get to collect, and those buttons are awesome. But that is why a lot of these never survived. Now, there is a man who in I believe it was like 1910, 1920s. He actually had a school, and he would have his students purposely make charm strings. And I'm going to get more into that story in a future video. It's one of those not well-known stories, but it is so interesting. And that caused lots of these charm strings to survive into the future. So we will, like I said, talk about that in the future when I can give you even more information. Another thing I talked about lightly was the taking of your pictures. I forgot to mention lighting. Just make sure they're lit enough so that we can see what the real colors are that we're looking at. Because, for example, this button, some people might call it a poison button. It's definitely in that style. It's about that size. And you can see this is sort of like a ruby red versus a bright red. So you don't want to adjust any colors or add any filters. You just want to take a nice natural looking picture so that we can identify it for you. So let's take a look at a few buttons. I already showed you there's some Waterbury button company buttons in here. I'm going to stand up. Yes, you heard the squeaky chair again. And this one I thought was really pretty with all the pearls. Some people might look at this and think, wow, that's a really nice vintage button. It is kind of vintage. It's from the 80s. I almost said the 70s. From the 1980s. In the 80s, they kind of brought back a couple different styles. One being like the 1940s, I would even say 30s, 40s look with the big shoulder pads, fancy smanchy buttons for the people that had a little bit more money. And then for those that didn't have as much, you would also have big buttons as well, but they would be plainer and usually in plastics and different plastics. So that's the other thing is like when you're looking at buttons and you're trying to figure out how old is this or what era is it from, you have to also research whether it is a revitalization of a former style, because that definitely happens. And as you know, they say that style always comes back around. That I believe is 100% true. This is one that I sort of like the design. It reminds me of a flower. And this is metal. Has a weird shank on it. So, like I said, the main purpose of me making this video is just to answer a few questions and to give you a little more context behind those questions. Look at this one. It has a place for a signature or a hallmark, but it was never hallmarked. And I'm going to say at least a couple. Yeah, there is another one. I don't think this one, nope, they're not hallmarked. So odd. This one I thought was interesting. Not my favorite, just interesting. Plenty of military buttons in here. But like I said, one of the reasons for me making this video is to get an idea from you guys as to how I should give these buttons away. I have donated buttons to various organizations, well, 3 of them to be exact. And so I'm not really looking to do that again. I am looking more so to, give them to people to use for their own projects. Maybe even hopefully add to your own collections. Yep, a lot of metal buttons in here. There's Tagawa nut buttons in here. There's all sorts of metals, or metal buttons, different types of plastics. What else did I see in here? Lucite buttons are in here. Pewter. Look at this one. Does this have flowers in it? I have to look closer. No, I don't think so. I saw some pewter buttons in here. you guys, did I say tagua nut? Vegetable ivory buttons. I saw several of those in here. So I just need to know how you guys think I should, do this. If we can make it fun, if it can, help grow the channel, which is always a goal. We need people to subscribe to the channel, but also watch the videos for 15 minutes or more, or listen to them. And of course, please leave comments. Comments are always helpful for me. They're motivators, so that I can sit there and say, yay, people do actually like this content. And then what I will do is create even more. Look at this one. I like this one because I don't know, it's weird. It's kind of futuristic, like a flying saucer, because it has a convex shape. But then it has all these little, like, dimples, I guess I'll call them. And then this weird nipple in the middle, but very tactile. So if you have any other questions I have not answered, please, once again, leave them down below. Also, I will attach the link to a Q&A video that I did a while ago, but that one is even better than this, you guys. I would say it's 20 times better. I answer more questions. I don't go into as much detail. Today I'm going into a little more detail regarding the main 4 questions because they are the questions I get all of the time. Here is a Waterbury Button Company button. So I just wanted to make sure I got those answers out there. And those questions I actually get on like several social media platforms, not just YouTube. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Velvet Lounge Life. Remember that your health is your wealth. Without your health, you have absolutely nothing. I wish you a super happy new year. Thank you all again for supporting the channel. And thank you for those that sent me gifts and cards. So much appreciated. Be well. Enjoy the rest of your day. And say hi.